What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Tune in to Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, and join the conversation about how to heal our broken system to reverse our current health crisis. The entire world is looking for answers, and the truth is hidden in plain sight. Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, when you can call in and ask the questions that matter most to you.
And we're live.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello and welcome, Wellness Warriors. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and you are listening to Awakened Wellness, where we're going on a mind-expanding adventure into disease prevention and wellness. Today's topic is a little bit more broad than usual. We don't have one specific topic, but what I wanted to do today was to go over a few of our client case studies, to kind of bring together all the things that we talk about all the time, and see how it actually works, in the real world, if you will. Part of what I do is to help my clients to better understand what they can do to empower themselves. And whenever we're learning anything new, it always seems overwhelming until we get an understanding of how we fit into it, how we fit into the picture. What does it look like for me to eat right? What does it look like for me to exercise properly? What does my diet look like? So as an individual, what's important is, how do I know how to apply what I'm learning? And we hear so much about different diets. This week it's this diet, next week it's some other diet. We hear about this food's bad today, but it's good tomorrow. And the reason for that is simply, you have to know what to apply when. A particular diet is not going to suit everyone, so it's important for you as an individual to know who you are, so that when you hear about a diet, you have a clear understanding as to whether or not that would be the diet for you. So today we're going to just talk about some case studies, some of my clients. Of course, I will not identify them by name, so that their privacy is guarded. But we will still discuss, what they came in for, what we found, what we did for them, and what happened at the end. What I'm hoping to do is to help inspire people to see themselves in these stories, so that they can see themselves getting well as well. And so, our first client came to us about 3 years ago, maybe even 4 now. She had debilitating migraine headaches. She came into my office literally crying from a headache. And she didn't stop crying until she was still crying when she left my office, put it that way. The pain was just so crippling. She hadn't worked in several months. She said she had a headache on most days, sometimes for an entire month at a time. She had been to multiple physicians and specialists, including, of course, her primary care physician and also a neurologist. She had CAT scans, MRIs, and she was diagnosed with migraines. They didn't find anything structurally wrong. She was prescribed multiple medications that were not helping her. And of course, the stress of being in so much pain was compounding the pain. And her biggest challenge when she came into the office wasn't just the migraines. It was the fact that she wasn't able to babysit her grandson. That is really what drove her into the office. She wanted to spend time with her grandson, and she was completely unable to do so. And she could barely leave her house. She could barely go shopping. She wasn't working. And so, of course, I promised her I would do my best, as I always do. And she came back. We had an evaluation. And the type of evaluation we use is Chinese medicine. We evaluate all of our clients using the principles of Chinese medicine in combination with our regular mainstream medicine. So I knew that she had already had the whole workup done for migraine. So we just got those records, reviewed them, made sure there was nothing to add or subtract from that equation. And then the rest of it was really a Chinese assessment. And what we assessed her with was dampness, in her head, phlegm damp in her head. It was actually originating from what in Chinese medicine is called the middle jiao, or the middle of the body. And so what was happening to her is she had so much congestion in the middle of her body from a gastrointestinal issue that the fluid and the inflammation was literally flooding her upper body. And so it was causing severe migraines due to the inflammation that the GI issue was causing her. The inflammation was compounded by the fact that she had numerous vitamin deficiencies. She had about 12 different vitamin and mineral deficiencies, again, because of the GI issue. So what we did is we put her on a specific diet that would reduce what we call damp and phlegm. Damp and phlegm are just a type of inflammation in Chinese medicine, a type of abnormal water metabolism or fluid metabolism, where the cells of the body just get swollen from inflammation. And that was causing increased pressure in her head. And the skull doesn't give, right? It's not flexible. When we're born, our skulls are malleable and flexible. That's how we pass through the birth canal, but then it starts to solidify. And so there's not a lot of room in there for things to get swollen. She even said that she was starting to have seizures from the swelling. And so, this was pretty significant. And so I diagnosed her with damp phlegm in her upper jiao and middle jiao. And so we put her on a diet specifically to reduce the dampness. And because she had also deficiency of the middle of her body, we put her on what we would call a spleen tonifying diet. Spleen in Chinese medicine is somewhat related to the gastrointestinal system. And also involves metabolism. So water metabolism, or what they call transformation in Chinese medicine, is the job of the spleen in Chinese medicine. And it's important to know that when I say the word spleen, I'm not talking about the little tiny organ that's tucked under the stomach called the spleen. In Chinese medicine, the spleen is an entire energy system that spans not only the entire body, but is outside of the body as well. So it's an energy system, and it's responsible for a ton of body function, including water metabolism. And so it was difficult for her to get on this diet because it was so counter to what she was used to eating. She was used to eating whatever she wanted, and it was making her extremely sick. And so part of the reason she was eating whatever she wanted is because she had massive food cravings because she was so depleted. So when you have a gut issue, what happens is you're not absorbing your food. So your body is literally starving. And so it sends out craving signals. And if you're trying to curb your appetite, so to speak, those cravings come like a tsunami eventually. And it's usually at night, because you've been really good all day. You mustered all your willpower to try and be good all day. And then at night is when the tsunami hits. And so she would just binge eat at night because she was starving. And she wasn't starving because she wasn't eating. She was starving because she wasn't absorbing what she was eating. And so what was happening is, because she was so depleted, she was getting inflammation, because your body requires food, vitamins, and minerals to properly manage the immune system. And when your immune system is not properly managed, one of the side effects is inflammation. And so we stuck with her, and she dug her heels in because she was confident that we could help her, because she had been referred by people who had been helped already. And so she dug her heels in, and she stayed the course. And so she really followed the nutrition plan as closely as she could, but she would binge eat every weekend. So we intervened every Friday, and I have a phenomenal registered dietitian named Mylaine, who is very committed to our clients. So Mylaine was back and forth with her. I was back and forth with her. And after a few weeks, she started to understand that every time she had particular foods, she would get a migraine, because she actually started to not have migraines for a couple days in a row. And so she started to understand that, oh, when I have that cake, or, the processed food, or, whatever not great thing I eat, I get a migraine, and so she started to link the two, and that gave her the momentum and the willpower to start curbing her appetite. In the meanwhile, what we did is we did testing for her. So because we knew she had a gut issue and we knew she would be depleted of vitamins and minerals, we did testing for her, and identified that she did indeed have an infection in her small intestine, which is extremely common. It's called a small bowel bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO for short, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And we did the vitamin and mineral testing and identified 12 vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies. So we prescribed supplements for her to take every day that would cover her deficiencies. And we treated her infection with natural methods. Took a few rounds, and eventually we did use antibiotics for her because the infection was difficult to get under control. But eventually we did get it under control. And she was very faithful taking her supplements. And eventually she really did start to follow the diet plan, very, very carefully. And she reported within a month that she no longer had migraines. And she actually lost 25 pounds in 2 months' time. And then really from there, it was kind of smooth sailing for her. Every once in a while she'd have a hiccup, and she would, go off the deep end if she had a stressful week or whatever. But she was babysitting her grandson. She was able to get out and do things. She was able to clean her house for the first time. And then what we found ourselves having to do was restrain her from doing too much. Sometimes when people feel better because now the GI issue is resolving, she started to absorb her food, and she was absorbing the supplements that we were taking her, we were giving her, prescribing to her based on her testing. Everything started to come together. So she had less inflammation, and she, the pressure in her head was minimizing. She was getting fewer and fewer food cravings because she was eating better, and she was actually able to absorb her food. So her metabolism was being powered through the use of supplements, proper nutrition. And we did some other things with her. We taught her how to breathe properly. We taught her some meditation techniques and stress management techniques, so she knew what to do, if she were in a stressful situation. And she became self-empowered, right? She became empowered to know that if I eat right, if I take my supplements, and eventually hopefully don't need my supplements because now I'm absorbing my food better, and I'm eating right, I don't have headaches, right? I don't have migraines. I can take care of my grandson. I can clean my house. I can go out and do things with my husband. And that was ultimately what she was able to do. And so it's about self-empowerment, right? A lot of people want to fall in our laps and say, yeah, tell me what to do and I'll do it, which is important, right? Because you need that guidance initially. Everybody needs some expert advice while they're trying to understand a concept better. Like she wouldn't know how to treat her own small bowel infection. She wouldn't know what supplements to take necessarily at the beginning. But as we work with you and empower you, you then begin to understand that for yourself, which is what is really the goal of what we do. Ultimately, our goal is to render ourselves obsolete in your life. It's to render you capable of knowing what to eat, when to eat it, and what suits you. So for this particular client, she had to avoid raw food like the plague. It was the worst thing she could do because her stomach was already too cold from the low metabolism. Her baseline body temperature was too low. It was like 96 and change. So that told us that she had deficiency of warming energies in her body. So she needed to eat things that were warming. So we advised her to eat soups and stews, and everything should be cooked, including vegetables. And yes, if you overcook your vegetables, you're going to cook the nutrition out of them. But if you put them in a broth, you'll retain the nutrition in the broth. And some people just cannot eat raw vegetables, not because it makes them immediately feel bad. She didn't immediately relate the raw food to her migraines, but they were a contributing factor because her overall body temperature was too low. So if someone's body temperature is too low, that tells us that we need to raise her body temperature, right? Some people say, well, that's my normal temperature. It's 96.7. No, that's not normal. that might be your baseline body temperature, but it's not normal. We tend to normalize things that become common, right? So because my temperature is always 96, I start to normalize that as my normal temperature. It's not normal. We know very well that our baseline human body temperature should be 98.6. Now, it could be off by 1/10 of a degree here and there. And certainly if you have an infection, it's supposed to be off. That's how we're alerted that we have an infection. But common does not equal normal, right? So our goal was to get her temperature back to 98.6. And what does doing that mean? Like, what does it mean? It means that her body can function properly, right? When we cool down the temperature of the planet, like for example, in the winter, everything slows down, right? And if we cool things off enough, they will freeze. Water will literally freeze if you cool it down enough, and it will stop moving. The same thing happens in the body, and the earth can tolerate wild temperature swings, but our bodies can't. Our bodies are very sensitive to the slightest temperature variations. And so as her body temperature was dropping and dropping from eating too many salads and having a low metabolism in general, her body function was suffering. So it was being forced to turn off certain functions that it could no longer perform. And her circulation slowed, right? Just like, again, when we drop the temperature on the planet, water will freeze eventually. Animals slow down, right? Animals sleep more. We sleep more. We need more sleep in the winter than we do in the summer. There's a reason for that. It has to do with the temperature and going with the rhythm. So if we do that artificially in the body, our body will slow down. Our circulation will slow down. We'll get more inflammation, and we'll get eventually sick. And so we worked with this client so that she could understand those principles, because they're not commonly taught, right? But they make sense. And according to traditional Chinese medicine, they make a lot of sense. They really flow in very nicely with the theory of Chinese medicine. And so for her now, she understands, okay, no raw food except on a rare occasion. If I'm trapped in the middle of nowhere and I have to eat something and the only thing available is a salad, then I'll do that. But then I have to go back to my soups and stews and broths and cooked food. So she understands that now. She understands that she has to be very vigilant about her gastrointestinal function. So she had symptoms of gastrointestinal issues, but because every time she went to the doctor, she was told nothing was wrong. She had her colonoscopies. She was told they were normal. So she assumed that those symptoms were normal. And again, they're not normal, right? We're not supposed to have symptoms. We're supposed to be symptom-free if all is well. That doesn't mean if you stub your toe, you're not supposed to have a symptom, right? You're supposed to feel pain if you stub your toe. But in the absence of stubbing your toe or doing anything of that nature, you should have no symptoms, right? And so even one symptom means something in Chinese medicine. And what's really telling about Chinese medicine is what we call symptoms in our mainstream medicine, they actually call diseases. So they don't mess around with symptoms. They understand that everything's important. Even one symptom is a disease and it needs to be corrected. In our mainstream model, we tend to just collect diseases, and keep normalizing them. And then when someone finally has what we recognize as a disease, then we mobilize. In Chinese medicine, it's not that at all. So in Chinese medicine, headache is not a symptom or a sign, it's an actual disease. For us, it's just a sign or a symptom. We don't necessarily recognize it as a disease unless it's a cancerous tumor causing it or a stroke causing it. Unless it's something we identify as a disease causing the symptom, we kind of don't pay it any mind. In Chinese medicine, they say, no, this is a disease. This symptom in and of itself is a disease because it's not normal, and we need to find its cause and correct the cause, and thereby treat the disease. So that's distinctly different about Chinese medicine, which is what makes it so powerful, is every symptom counts. Every symptom means something. Your body doesn't sit around manufacturing symptoms like it has nothing better to do. If it manufactures even one symptom, it's because it needs to, in order to alert you that something's out of balance, and it's, asking and requiring that balance be restored. So do we have a question? Would it be helpful for my health to live in a hot climate like Florida? Are the outside temps important for my body to thrive? That's a great question. Actually, it might be like if you're too cold, if you're someone who is too cold, you would benefit from being out in the sun. You would benefit from infrared saunas. But interestingly, even in Florida where I live, people are too cold. So for example, this client I'm telling you about lives in Florida, and so we have all this artificial climate. We have air conditioning. So when you live in Florida, you're literally running from one air conditioned environment to the next. And you're almost never outside unless it's mid-February, like it is now. So now you could go outside for a run, you could go play tennis, you could play golf, you'd be completely comfortable. But in the middle of July, that would be a whole other story. And so it's not so much where you live, although that does matter. The issue we have here in Florida is it's very humid. So we have a lot of damp conditions in Florida. But heat conditions kind of more depend on your nutrition, how much stress you're under, what your, supplements that you're taking, your metabolism, the level of metabolism. So wherever you live, you can correct those things as long as you know what to do. But that's a great question. But what we find is in Florida, we're colder than we're supposed to be because we're in artificial climates all day. And if you look at nature is really brilliant, right? Warmer climates like Florida and further south towards the equator, like in the Caribbean, Central and South America, the foods that are innately grown there are cold. So tropical fruits are cold. The fish in the ocean, cold. So the foods that naturally come from those regions tend to be cold. And so nature understood that if I put someone in a very hot climate, I have to give them balancing food. Same thing if you're from Canada and Alaska, where the buffalo and the bison and the elk are. Those types of foods are very hot. So when you live in a very cold climate, nature puts very hot food there so that you can balance yourself. But what nature did not intend is for us to have artificial climates. And so that kind of throws everything for a loop. So, but that's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. There's another question here. Let me get. Yes, question. Spleen, I missed the outside parts of it in Chinese medicine. Can you address that again? Yes, so in Chinese medicine, when we talk about organs like the liver, the spleen, the heart, the lung, We're not talking about just the physical structure that we identify in the physical body. When they talk about spleen in Chinese medicine, they're talking about an energy system, not the actual organ that we identify as the spleen in anatomy class. So spleen's a tiny little organ. It's tucked under your stomach, and it's known to make, blood cells. And we're very quick to remove it if necessary. But that's not the spleen in Chinese medicine, although it's part of the spleen in Chinese medicine. Spleen is a, body-wide energy system. And it has a ton of different functions. It's in Chinese medicine, it would be considered probably the most important organ system, because of all the functions that it has. So if you look at any diagrams in Chinese medicine of the organs, the spleen is usually in the center and the other organs surround it. And they have a premise in Chinese medicine that says spleen is king. And spleen has to do loosely with metabolism, water metabolism in particular, but energy metabolism, has to do with blood. Our blood is made in the spleen. Has to do with our energy. So qi is also made in the spleen. So it's a very, very critically important organ. So it's kind of like our gastrointestinal system and our metabolism wrapped together. If we had to pick a mainstream system that we would equate with spleen in Chinese medicine, has also to do with thinking, logic, memory, metabolism, water metabolism, energy metabolism, and gastrointestinal function. So when you have a gastrointestinal problem, your spleen qi will be interrupted in some way, and you'll have some type of water metabolism issues. So I hope that helps to answer that question. All right, so it looks like it's time for our first commercial break. Great questions, I love them. Looking forward to answering more when we come back. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe. You are listening to Awaken Wellness, and we will be right back.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every Thursday and Friday, 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom weaved through his delightful stories. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
Looking for a fun and relaxing getaway? Omega Rest and Rejuvenation Retreats are a great way to unwind and renew your spirit. Sit and read in the garden, explore the woodland trails, or try a daily yoga or meditation class. You can stretch your body, quiet your mind, and do as much or as little as you choose. Located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City, Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org.
Delight your kids with an enchanting journey by reading the Paper Doll Kids children's book by Deborah Beauvais and Janine Sullivan. There's even a catchy tune, Kids for Love Song, produced by Bob Sherwood and sung by kids just like yours. The story weaves around 7 paper dolls flying around the world doing good deeds as they bring important attention to our endangered animal friends. There's even a magical ring with a universal message. Kids become interested in service projects, action through compassion, and planting seeds that nurture positive change. The Paper Doll Kids and Kids for Love Song are a production of the Kids for Love Project. Get the book now on Amazon Kindle and the song on CD Baby or iTunes.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we're back.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome back to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and we are live here on Dream Vision 7 Radio. So give us a call, area code 646-558-8656. We'd love to keep the questions coming, and we do have one here. We have a couple. Question, I drink coffee sometimes. Sometimes I get a headache. Could I be allergic to coffee? I hope not, because I love coffee too. Probably not, but here is the thing about coffee. In Chinese medicine, coffee would be considered to be a yang substance. Yang is energy moving, so it moves energy, and it's hot. And so in our conventional medicine, scientifically, we know coffee to be what's called a cathartic. And so when you drink coffee, you have to go to the bathroom, right? And it wakes you up. And so it moves your energy, right? Whether it's moving down and out in the case of, urine and feces, or it's moving up and out in the case of increasing your energy, it moves energy. The problem is if you don't have enough energy to move and you're drinking coffee, it's going to wear you down. And so you could get a headache because it's over moving you or overstimulating you, if that makes sense. So whether or not people drink coffee in our practice, whether we recommend it, depends on just how depleted they are. So if someone's really depleted, right, you feel their pulses and their pulses are weak, they're tired. If they're drinking coffee, they could very well get a headache, or they could be overstimulated by the coffee. We often hear of coffee withdrawals, like if you stop drinking coffee, you get a headache. But this is when you drink coffee. So it's very likely that you have some deficiencies, that you're depleted in some way. And when you drink the coffee, it moves energy you don't even have. And so what happens when your body has to move energy it doesn't have is it starts stealing from other systems to get that energy. And so if it's stealing energy from places that your head needs to properly function, you could potentially get a headache. Or if it's causing your blood vessels to constrict too much because there's not enough blood in your blood vessels. So again, that's a depletion. So if you're blood deficient and your pulses are weak, you probably don't have enough energy going up to your head. And so when you drink coffee, you are over utilizing energy, and that kind of backfires on you and causes a headache. So hopefully I explained that properly, but that's very likely what's happening. So the chances are that you need some vitamins and minerals. Again, the best thing to do is to be tested by a board certified integrative medical doctor. there are specific tests that we can do to tell you those answers very specifically. And if you correct the vitamin and mineral deficiencies or the food deficiencies, the headaches should stop. So I'm not aware of allergies to coffee, but you could definitely, if you're in a depleted state, have side effects from coffee. Question, my wife has, oops. She's had them for over 10 years now. I reassure her that I don't notice them, that she's beautiful. She's starting to avoid going out, thinks she looks too tired or old. Although she's tried everything, wondering if you had any tricks to help her. Jeez. I tend to get those too sometimes. So I hear you. That's usually inflammation, right? So one of the things you could try to do is to figure out if there's a particular food that you're eating that's causing that. Ice on your eyes might help. I don't often recommend ice, but sometimes that will, just get it to feel better or to look better, I guess. There are some, minor surgical procedures that she could entertain to have that corrected as well. But usually it's inflammation, again, water metabolism. Puffy eyes in particular, if it's the skin under the eyes, that is the spleen in Chinese medicine. So in Chinese medicine, every small part of you reflects all of you. So your face actually reflects all of your organs in Chinese medicine, even the ear. If you look at your ear, it looks like an upside down fetus in a womb, an upside down baby in a womb, with the head being the earlobe, center being the organs, and the outside being the musculoskeletal system. And people are generally familiar with reflexing, where your organs are reflected in the bottoms of your feet. And when we do tongue diagnosis, we're looking at all of your organs reflected in your tongue. So on the face, the lower eyelids are the spleen area. And so very likely there's a gastrointestinal or a metabolic issue going on there. So I hope that answers your question. Another question, I heard you mention low pulse rate. My watch alarms me often for low pulse rate, 45 to 48, but I feel fine. So this energy depletion you mentioned could be involved. Do you have any suggestions for vitamins to improve my pulse rate? The first thing I would say is to make sure you don't have a cardiovascular issue going on, right? So sometimes there are heart arrhythmias or abnormal heart rates that cause your heart rate to be very low. And so you want to make sure that that's not what you're dealing with before you try and resolve it in any other way. So that would be caveat number one, is to make sure you've seen your primary care physician, a cardiologist, rule out any cardiovascular causes. You can see a low pulse rate with energy depletion. So in Chinese medicine, a yang deficiency. Yang is heat. It's the yang is a lot of things. One of the things it is, it's hot. And it's airy and it's rising. Yin is more substantial, heavy, and cold. So when someone's pulse is too low, like in the 40s, it's either that there's too much yin or too little yang. And so you have to kind of figure out, well, which is it? And again, a tongue and pulse assessment will kind of help you know that. So if you have a really weak pulse, it could be a yang deficiency, especially if you feel cold as well. And then there are other signs and symptoms of yang deficiency. Sometimes you'll see that the tongue is somewhat pale. If it's a yin excess, the pulse wouldn't be as deficient. And tongue could still be pale. There might be a white coating on the tongue, depending on what else is going on. There could also be coldness in the system. And the pulse would feel a certain way with coldness. It's kind of tight. It's what they define as a tight pulse. And of course, you would feel cold, so if you feel cold, your pulse rate is that low. Usually the blood pressure is fairly low, like 90/60, or sometimes even 80/60. That could be what's called a yang deficiency. So warming yourself up, infrared saunas, going out in the sun, eating warm foods, soups, stews, putting a little bit of spice in your food, a little bit of cayenne pepper, a little bit of chili, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, fennel is warming, ghee is warming. So all the things that are kind of warming, making sure your food is fairly well cooked, not raw, that helps to raise body temperature and pulse in the absence of a heart arrhythmia. So please make sure that that's not what you're dealing with, because otherwise those other things are not going to, they won't hurt you, but they won't help you. So get that checked out is what I would say for sure. But I hope that answers your question there. All right, that's, I think, all the questions. Yes. So we'll look out for more as they come in. Not yet time for a commercial break. We'll go into our next case. So this is a gentleman whose wife referred him. He was in his upper 50s, I would say, at the time, and came to us because he was getting sick all the time. He had been on repeated courses of antibiotics for several months, kept relapsing and getting sick. And this is pre-COVID. This wasn't COVID. This was before COVID. And so she asked him to come and see me to see if we could help him. He was also prescribed steroids, antibiotics, and he would get better for a few days and then he would relapse. His symptoms were dry, nagging cough and occasional congestion. So when he came, we diagnosed him with what's called a Wei Qi deficiency, and he also had a yin deficiency, which was causing him to accumulate a lot of heat in his body. So he was very acidic, which was causing his lungs to dry out. So heat in Chinese medicine, we would equate to acidity in our mainstream medicine. And when you catch a cold, sometimes what happens is you no longer have the cold, but what's happening is your lungs are dry. And so the cells of your lungs will try and moisten your lungs back up, but your lungs will remain too dry. And so people will develop this dry, hacking cough, especially at night when your yin energy is supposed to be higher and there's not enough yin. You're going to run into yin problems at night. So his cough was more pronounced at night. And it was a dry cough. He wasn't really bringing up too much phlegm, except in the morning, as things accumulated overnight, he would have a little bit of phlegm in the morning. But other than that, it was this dry hacking cough that he had for months. He couldn't sleep. It was bothering him. Couldn't focus at work because he was exhausted. And so there are herbs in Chinese medicine that we prescribe specifically for lung dryness. And then we also needed to then work on his Wei Qi deficiency. And what Wei Qi in Chinese medicine is the immune system. So there is a layer of defense in Chinese medicine that protects the body. So it actually protects energetically the body from viruses and bacteria and other pathogens. And that was weak. And so he kept getting repeatedly sick, and then he would have weeks of this cough, and then he would get sick again. And so we did testing to determine what was going on there. And he didn't have much of a gut issue. His gastrointestinal function was actually quite good. His issue turned out to be stress related. So he had so much stress in his life that was creating high levels of acidity, which was affecting his circulation. So when we looked at his tongue was red and it had a little bit of a purple hue in it, and it was dry. And so that told us that he was too dry, too acidic. There wasn't much of a coating on his tongue at all, which suggested he was also depleted underneath all of the acidity and the poor circulation. His pulse was what we call wiry. So he had a lot of energy. It just wasn't quite moving. And when your energy is very stagnant, it can wear you out, if that makes sense. So if you're constantly pushing, trying to move energy around, and you're having to push harder than usual, you're going to deplete yourself. So that's what was happening to him. So we put him on a raw diet. So we had him juicing vegetables, green leafy vegetables, bright colored vegetables, at least once a day, to re-moisten him and to get rid of the acidity as much as possible. We worked very much with him to reduce his stress levels. We worked on his breathing, his meditation. We prescribed herbs for him, and we also corrected his vitamin deficiencies, because he did have about 8 to 10 vitamin deficiencies when he first came in, that we were able to correct with oral supplements only, because he didn't have a GI issue. So he stopped coughing. The cough went away. He got fewer and fewer colds over time. They didn't just stop coming. They got less and less frequent. And then he stopped catching colds altogether. Once we were able to catch up with his vitamin deficits, reduce all the acidity, improve his circulation with his diet and lifestyle changes, he was feeling, much better, and he didn't have to take antibiotics. The other thing we counseled him to do is to not take antibiotics at all for a cold, because what that does is that weakens your immune system over time through the disruption of the good bacteria in your gastrointestinal system. So while he didn't have any overt infections or malabsorption, he did have some imbalance of his microbiome, which we did help him to correct. But we did counsel him, please don't ever take antibiotics just for a cold. If you have pneumonia or something else, that's different, but not just for a cold. So we're going to go to our next commercial break here. Thank you for listening. We'll answer some questions on the way back. I am your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and we will be right back.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
EDECIA is a U.S. nonprofit dedicated to the dream of ending childhood malnutrition for millions of children around the world through the manufacture of Plumpy Nut and other nutrient-rich, peanut-based, ready-to-use foods. EDECIA has already delivered life and hope to nearly 1 million children in over 26 developing countries. To find out how you can join EDECIA's dream of ending childhood malnutrition, please visit edeciaglobal.org.
What if dreams can diagnose your life? What if we can meet the love of our life in dreams? Join host Kat O'Keefe Canavas, the #1 internationally best-selling author of Dreams That Can Save Your Life, written with Duke University medical doctor Larry Burke. Dreaming Healing is where we'll explore dreams, research, and interpret dreams from you, the caller. Dreaming Healing shows can be heard every Tuesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, with live shows on the first and third evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Come live your dreams out loud with Kat.
Are you searching for a way to help create global change? Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's vision is to have an eclectic group of radio hosts dedicated to educating, enlightening, and helping humankind with positive messages and tools that enhance lives using different modalities and programs. If you would like to join our team and help illuminate the universe, call Deborah at 508-226-1723 or Deborah at dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we're back.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome back to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe. And today we're talking about how to apply all the things we talk about on the podcast and what it looks like for clients when they come in. One of the most common things we see, like with the two clients that we talked about today, is almost everybody has some type of metabolism issue, right? And so, what are some of the basic things people can do? Well, your temperature when you first wake up in the morning is very telling. So as you just open your eyes and you take your temperature, if you see that it's consistently, too low, or even if you take it throughout the day, don't take it when you've just been outside or just had something hot to drink, or you've been very active, because it'll be higher. But if you're at your baseline, and you take your temperature and it's not 98.6, if it's significantly lower, or sometimes significantly higher. I have some people who hover at 99 and change, right? That's because they're too hot, they're too acidic. And people with low temperature, that's much more common. So raising body temperature is important, and that will also cause your pulse rate to be lower, just like our caller stated in her question. It'll cause your blood pressure to be too low. And there are certain hormones that are responsible for regulating that. In fact, there are many hormones that are responsible for regulating body temperature. Thyroid being one of the more commonly known ones, and cortisol, as well as, estrogen has a lot to do with body temperature, progesterone, testosterone. So many hormones have overlapping functions, because your body's smart and it knows that it has to cover all its bases and have a lot of overlap, or you'll drop dead. So there are many hormones. So hormone balance is extremely important, as well as nutrition, when it comes to maintaining proper body temperature. A lot of times people will just be kind of following the wrong diet for them, right? They read articles about raw diets, and a lot of vegans eat a lot of very raw food, and it suits some of them, but it's not going to suit all of them, in particular the ones that have low body temperature to begin with. They will eventually run into trouble with eating just raw food. So I always say that the best thing is to kind of hedge your bets, right? Not to ever be in one direction or another. In Chinese medicine, one of the things that's taught and emphasized is no restrictive diet is recommended for very long. So we prescribe restrictive diets only for a certain period of time. So that client that came in, the second client that we talked about today, who was getting the frequent colds, he stayed on a raw diet only as long as it took for his tongue not to be red anymore. So once his tongue started to pink up, and we saw that he wasn't so acidic anymore, and he had changed his diet around, and that drove the acidity out, then we leveled his diet out. We didn't keep him on a raw diet, because if you stay on a raw diet past its utility, then you're going to get too cold, and we don't want that either. So balance is always the key. So having a diet that's balanced and varied is very important. Now, if you're too acidic, you'll need an alkaline or ionized raw diet, but only for as long as it takes for the acidity to go away. And then you balance out. You have some raw, some cooked, some acidic, some alkaline, and you can't really be on a fully alkaline diet. That's not even possible, so it's kind of a myth that you can really, be on an alkaline diet, because the human body is acidic. everything that makes up the structure of your body is an acid. So fatty acids make up your fats. Those are acids. Amino acids that make up your proteins. So everything that creates the structure of your body, hair, eyes, skin, your organs on the inside, your blood vessels, all of it is made of acid. It's all amino acids and fatty acids. And so the idea that we should avoid acids is not based in fact. Alkaline diet comes into the picture to improve circulation, but you have to have some acid in your diet. You have to have fats, you have to have proteins. Otherwise, your body will fall apart. If you don't replace what your body is made of structurally, it will fall apart. So we don't keep people on what we would call an alkaline diet for long. And it's not really fully alkaline, right? We still had him eating proteins and fats, and it's not possible not to eat those things and stay healthy. So, the point being, everything should be balanced, so the best thing is to have the guidance. Chinese medicine practitioner should be able to help you through nutrition guidance. A registered dietitian or a nutritionist should also be able to help you. But it's important also to know, if I feel cold all the time, I probably need to avoid raw food until I stop feeling cold. And if I feel hot all the time, I probably need to avoid red meat and spicy food until I don't feel hot anymore, right? Spicy food and red meats and gamey meats are hot, very hot. Raw vegetables and citrus fruits in particular are very cold. And so those are some ideas that people can have, like, oh, I'm hot all the time, so I should probably eat more citrus, and also tropical fruits are very cold. I should probably incorporate more of that in my diet, a little bit more raw vegetables, and then definitely eliminate red meats, gamey meats, and things that are very spicy, like cayenne pepper and hot sauce and things like that, too much curry. Those things will make you even hotter. So those are some of the things that we try to teach, and some of the things I emphasize here on the podcast to help empower people to get a sense of, how should I eat? What should I do throughout the day? And then also we talked to this gentleman about stress reduction, right? And breathing and meditation and all of the things that help reduce stress. Stress causes a lot of acidity and poor circulation in the body because of how it interrupts, the proper immune functions, how it interrupts your metabolism. So when you breathe and you practice meditation, you help to mitigate some of those things and restore balance. That also helps to restore your hormones. So I hope you found this podcast to be helpful today. Some people were asking me, like, how does this apply, like, in real life? Like, what does it look like? So I thought I'd put this podcast together for them. And I hope it helped you as well. And that is all the time we have for our podcast today. Thank you so much for listening to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and we'll see you again soon. Many blessings.
Join us next time on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, to learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness. Awakened Wellness airs every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern of each month. Meanwhile, you can join our Facebook page at facebook.com/awakenedwellness and let us know what you'd like to discuss on future episodes. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit riobeintegrativemedicine.com. This show is part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe.